live on the internet. Hi, Mickey. How's your food?
It's delicious. Hello
Are you
there.
having a nice salad?
Yeah, it's quite delicious.
Cool. So I think everything's working, at least technologically. I don't know about anything else, but in
One step at a
theory,
time.
the show's working. So someone will tell us if we've screwed this up. I did tweet. Anyway, welcome to SonarFeed episode 273. Sammy the Sounder is back.
Big news.
Sammy the Sounder not here tonight at the bar
That's somewhat disappointing. We probably could have gotten that if we had
because
tried.
killer whales don't go to bars.
That'd be a pretty big story if that were the case.
The worst part is, you guys know we will definitely get Sammy the Sounder on SonarFeed, right? Like, let's just say we know some official channels, and yeah.
I'm actually fairly excited for that.
Like what? Like, I just like how much nodding is gonna happen? Like, can we come up with a signal system? We need a signal system or like some sort of like flow so that we can. Wow. Or we could get a translation system that like, what's the? I mean, noises isn't the right word. Whatever the calls,
Oh,
the sounds that are emanating from Sammy the Sounder.
whale song? Is that
We
the-
maybe Sammy's handler will be a translator. Is Sammy of age? We don't know. What's important though is the Berliner family friendly.
that is true.
So anyway, welcome to SonarFeed. We are live here at the Berliner Pub in downtown Renton.
Ahead of the curve.
I can't decide if they're the peanut gallery or like. Yeah, I don't even know what else to say, but cool. Anyway, it's good to have a peanut gallery. So we have fun folks here at the bar with us tonight. The fire pit is on because, you know, it's a little
This
chilly.
weather is ridiculous.
And grandma's going to Florida tonight. So she's got a blanket, the fire pit on full bore, actually. And it's pretty serious down here at the Berliner. So anyway, we had I'm not going to say really good. I'm going to say a good Sounders match the other
I
night.
think that's a
The
that's a
thing
fair way
is,
to put it.
I actually feel like we all have just forgotten about the ills of the last multiple seasons. And now we're like, Sounders only won 1-0. Stefan Fry only made a save he didn't need to with his face. I can't believe they only scored 1 goal. Disaster. No, great result. And I had been remarking before the show that before we get again to the top news about Sammy the Sounder, we'll touch that. But really, Jeremiah and the fine folks at Sounder at Heart, I think, have been wisely trying to manage people's expectations. And Mark Kastner
Should have done that with the Sammy the Sounder news.
No, but you know, Mark had posted something, and you know, it was kind of a little bit of about the post-match pontifications, and it was like level setting up front. It's like, if you're reading this, you've got a job to do. Like, really well said, actually. And the point was, the game is nowhere as bad as multiple people have said it was or alluded to. Not at all bad game. But I will say almost everybody I talked to at Temple afterwards was like, I had higher expectations for this match, and that's really interesting. Like,
especially since they didn't have Rui Diaz.
Right. But and we should talk a lot about that because you, in a acceptable way, saw a different team because he wasn't there. And some of that's just what the defenders do when Will Bruin is out there in his place versus the things that Rui Diaz just creates and does that are different. That said, if that's what the offense looks like when your starting forward isn't playing, I'm super okay with it.
Yeah, I think it was a weird game just because they had some opportunities. Again, they got out on the front foot. This time they got a goal for their efforts as opposed to in Vancouver where they were dominating for the first, say, 20, 25
Yep.
minutes and couldn't get a goal. So they got the goal. And then I think RSL came into the game a little bit, but it wasn't that they were overly
Well, no, at that
dominating
point
of
they
the
were like, we
Sounders.
need to do a thing,
Yeah.
I guess. Not get a red card.
Yeah, and they managed to do that. So that
Yeah,
was good
well
on them.
done.
And so they came into the game a little bit, and then halftime comes, and then the second half comes out, and they got into the game a little bit more. And then speaking of people who may not have been happy, Schmetzer said after the game that he really wasn't happy with the Savarino attempt.
Yeah.
It should have been a goal. Even Schmetzer basically
Yep.
conceded that he should have scored there. I'm not sure how he didn't. And so that ended up being the big takeaway from the game, aside from Nico's incredible volley, because there wasn't really anything else
Right.
to
And
really talk about.
It was interesting because it wasn't, and we talked a little bit afterwards. RSL could have had easy 2 goals, if not 3. Like, they missed things.
Yeah.
And that's on them. And part of that's just Sounders are that good to be able to recover. So, something hits a post, you need to clear something egregious,
Yeah.
etc. Like, they were that good, and that's what we expect them to do. But there were a couple points where, like, that game could have been 2-1, and you would be like, how did that even happen? Like, that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And it wasn't even like counters, like full-on counters. It was just a couple of interesting things. There was some passing in the defensive, forget third, the defensive 10th that I was literally screaming at players about. I was like, what are you doing?
Yeah, Kim Key
Like,
had a couple
you're
of,
not even passing to Fry as like the drop pass. It's like, oh, we're just going to pass it some square balls in the 18. Stop doing that. Like, there's a player running at you. Stop doing that. And then again, they're professional soccer players. They can do it. It's fine. But I've watched Stefan Fry yell at people for less than that.
Yeah.
And that's when I go, are you guys like disorganized? Like, what happened here? Because it happened more than once.
Yeah.
Like, there were a couple of moments where there seemed to be either maybe a little bit of miscommunication or like we can't get past this push
I think
RSL is putting up. And I wasn't really sure what it was.
they weren't high pressing really, but they were putting some pressure on, especially in the second half. And that's, again, where they started to look a little better. And speaking of people who weren't happy, Fry wasn't happy after the game either with the result. Or I should say not with the result, but with some of the play. He called it sloppy in the back, and probably alluding to what you're talking about as far as some of the questionable passing. But, at the end of the day, obviously you get the result. So,
Yeah. And again,
it's
it
tough
was
to
fine.
be too upset, but there's things.
For sure.
There's some, I wouldn't even call them red flags, but
You know
some
what?
things
If
that
this is
raise
the
your eyebrow.
conversation we're having, I'm super okay with it. Having, again, survived the last couple seasons, let's not do that again. But there were a couple moments where it did feel like Svensson had to step in to, frankly, turn the ball forward, where it just seemed like it was meandering around in that final third. I'm like, y'all are better than RSL. It's going to be okay. What are you doing? And, like, again, if they want to switch fields over and over again and take people out, cool. That wasn't what it looked like. It looked like we are unsure as to how to advance from the back four to the middle.
Yeah, and it wasn't like RSL wasn't bunkering in their end, so they were playing a straight up game, and so I think that's probably what the Sounders expected.
Yeah.
They didn't expect what Vancouver did, and they said that after the game they just weren't prepared for Vancouver to bunker at home. So this game, maybe the opposite.
The
happened. They were
O
expecting a bunker, but it didn't happen.
the 10-0-0.
Yes. the blocks of 5. Yeah, it was. So again, they played them straight up. They pressed them at points, and Salt Lake's not a terrible team. They're off to a tough start, but they made the playoffs last year. They've got some pretty talented players, so that may have had a little bit to do with it. But I think again, it's just nothing that's overly concerning. Just things that you learn as you go through a season. Again, we are only 5 to 6 games in for most teams.
Week 5.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and again, they are 4-0-1, so nothing to complain about whatsoever on the result side of things. but it's just one of those things where they're just going to have to work out some more of the kinks as the season goes along, and hopefully they'll do that because they're going to need to, because the games are now going to start coming fast and furious.
Real
by
fast.
way of segue to what's coming
So
up next.
we could, we could probably bridge into the schedule. There's probably some game things we could come back to.
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
There's some good comments in the chat from JJ and others about some specific players and some things we've seen.
Yeah, absolutely.
But like real fast, and we talked about this last week, and then I think the previous show. Like schedule gets interesting for a hot second here.
Yeah.
So coming up on Wednesday, not the 4th of July, which is amazing.
Shocking.
At Colorado. Colorado is not good. Eileen is here. Travel Monkey Eileen is giving us the heads up on maybe we're going to need the high vis ball.
Yes, orange
on
ball
Wednesday,
time.
which is amazing because it'll probably be like 72 and sunny in the like even in the morning, and then there'll be like a foot and a half of snow.
I love Denver.
It's like, oh, I don't know how to pack for this at all. But like come Wednesday, right? So it's match 6 for Sounders. Sounders will have played Colorado, Vancouver, RSL, Chicago, and Cincinnati. All teams 12 and below in the Shield standings. And again, it's early. It is what it is. And there's a very big escalation on Saturday.
Yes.
So 1 o'clock, day game Saturday, coming off a midweek matchup in Colorado. Toronto comes to town. Toronto's pretty good.
Yeah.
We think. I mean, who
I
knows?
think they're
But
pretty good.
They look pretty good. They did not trade up. They have improved some things.
Mm-hmm.
There's some interesting offensive linkage happening in that squad right now that I think is going to be a challenge. And maybe it's honestly, Vancouver aside, which is a different animal, it's probably the test.
Yeah.
Like the early test in the season.
Yeah, they obviously brought back most of the same players, except for one big exception in Giovinco, who went to go ply his trade in the Middle East. But they brought in somebody who appears to be, if not an upgrade, at least a suitable replacement in Pozuelo, who was incredible in their first game and still had an assist in the game over the weekend against Chicago. So they're going to provide a big test for the Sounders. I still think we should win that game.
Because
even
Sounders,
and you're playing at home, and they'll be up for the game, and there's going to be a lot of rotation on
also,
Wednesday.
Steph is definitely happy to stick it to Toronto whenever feasible. So,
obviously we'll talk a little bit about what rotation is going to be necessary over the next 2 games, and over the next month, for that matter.
Next month, and then go from there real quick. A week out from Saturday, or a week and a day out, LAFC away.
Yeah.
So a midweek week off. But like 2 out of 3 weeks with 3 matches real quick.
Yeah.
But LAFC, who is straight punishing teams, like destroying people. And I chuckled watching that match. And we definitely are going to talk about cameras in the supporter section at some point this evening. But DC was, quote, the best in the East. Yeah, no. They might be
the best in the East, but that may not be saying very much at this point.
But, like, they got demolished. And that was before Wayne Rooney took a pretty serious red. And the best part about that whole red card situation was, are you guys out of here? Good night. Safe travels, Grandma. Sorry to interrupt the flow. Thank you for coming. Before the ref even got back to Rooney and rescind the yellow, he had already taken off the captain's armband.
Yeah.
He was pretty fully aware of that. And then the other thing about that game is Rossi has drawn 3 reds, I think.
That's interesting. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I think it's 3. Thank you. but I think it's 3 red cards that he specifically has drawn. And it may be 4 total cards, but it's something dumb like that.
Yeah.
And not that he's truly responsible for that, but that they're scary enough that players are doing things that are going to get them red carded. Yeah. That's pretty nuts.
Yeah, that team is just incredible on the offensive side of the ball. They've got Diamande, who's a pretty stud forward.
That
Ramirez,
guy's okay.
Yeah, he's a pretty good guy, obviously. And they just, as an expansion team, they were able to just, with the millions of dollars in TAM and GAM that they get, they were just able to, buy a bunch of really good players. And so their depth at the front line is pretty amazing.
Yeah, I think we all felt last year that they had done something really, really well. So much so that they fully eclipsed Zlatan coming to MLS. And as shiny as that guy is from week to week, like, think about how different it would have been if Zlatan happened last year and no LAFC. Yeah. Like, the spectacle would have been so very, very different. Instead, you've got a powerhouse squad in the city proper. Like, and the interesting dynamic there is LA as a city or as a area is trying to change like where people do things and sort of where the core is.
Yeah, LA and Live, obviously.
The sports core has moved, and LAFC is like a jewel in that crown, and it's really interesting to see. Aside from that, they have nailed, in my opinion, attracting the Latino audience, both like locally, and frankly nationally or internationally, with, signing players like Vela, who's just staggeringly good.
Like, I'm waiting in the league.
Some team is somewhere is going to be like, that guy, here is all the money.
Well, he almost went to Barcelona on a loan in mid-season,
like for fun,
or over the winter break, and so that just tells you how highly thought of he is and what good form he's in.
It's really interesting. So to get into them, and John in the chat mentions like, not loving the back-to-back. I like back-to-back as a concept because in other sports it's interesting. In baseball, it's actually super cool, like home and home, like one weekend, the next weekend, like, Yankees at Boston, whatever it is. Like, there's some value to it, but the games are different and, like, the pain is different. This, on one hand, I'm like, get them out of the way. I don't want to think about them anymore. Yeah, right. On the other hand, you're like...
Same thing happened last year, actually.
They are romping on people.
Yeah, this is a bad time to catch them.
Yeah, like, they're going to come into that match super excited to play Sounders.
Yeah, not to look too far ahead, but we're looking ahead. But if the Sounders are able to get 2 good results out of this week, whether it's a win and a draw or 2 wins or what have you, then you've got, and assuming LAC wins, then you've got probably the last 2 undefeated teams coming to play each other next week or next weekend. So that's going to be pretty crazy.
Good for Sounders, knock knock. This weekend they play Cincinnati at LA, but then they have Vancouver away midweek. So Sounders don't have a midweek match prior, which is good. And then it's the home and home. Wednesday, Sunday, Sunday, right? That is, they're both Sundays.
Yeah.
They have a little bit of a disadvantage is too strong of a term, but I'm happy that they have a midweek game before playing Sounders because you never know what's going to happen. But I don't know. Like, I'm super confident in what Sounders bring to the table week after week. They're legit interesting to watch. It's not just like they're stomping on people too. It's actually like pretty good soccer.
Yeah, and their defense, lapses aside, has been very good. They've given up the least amount of goals in the league, and so a part of that it probably has to do with the stability of the back line. They've now played with each other.
Yeah,
for now basically a year plus. Kim Keehee came in, at the beginning of last year, but Leardom and and then Marshall have obviously been there, and then Smith came in. So they haven't had a lot of turnover. Obviously, knock on wood, the injury situation has been pretty good, especially on the back line. That's been important, especially given the age of Marshall in particular. And Smith had some injury issues as well last year. So they've had some continuity, and then they're obviously supremely talented, and they have the experience. So it's been really nice to see them be able to stick the same lineup out there.
Yeah.
As I said, talking about Colorado, that's going to definitely change.
Well,
here
especially
on
with the
Wednesday.
weather. So, especially the weather
Yeah.
situation, I think is will have an impact on the lineup you see.
Yeah, I'm
both
curious
good
to
and
see
bad.
how much the rotation is, given the amount of games. If this was just kind of a one-off, 3 games in 8 days, then maybe they try to run up most of the guys for all 3 games. But given the amount of congestion, that's all but certain not to happen. So, Fry will probably play all the games.
Yeah.
Smith maybe, Leardom maybe. Marshall, I'd say it's almost a guarantee he does not travel to Colorado. And that's
You
where
don't even think he
Torres-
travels.
I highly doubt it.
What if he really just wants to hang out with Tim Howard?
I still think the team is going to say, why don't you just take the day off and just enjoy.
Mix it up a little bit.
Yeah.
So
I would
is
say
that a Campbell conversation? 'Cause
I don't know.
Let's not have that conversation, please.
I wouldn't say preference, but my thought would be is you have Kim Ki-hee and Torres on Wednesday.
Yeah.
And then you have Torres and Marshall on Saturday versus Toronto, so you have a little platoon there.
Mix it up a little bit.
Each of the 3 center backs
Get Torres some minutes.
Torres gets minutes, and each of them plays 2 games.
So, total sidebar, and there's some really good comments about Leardom, Smith, and others in the chat. So we should get to them in a second. But do you think, given where the season has gone so far, and given, frankly, rumors from last year, that anything happens with Torres if he just keeps not getting minutes? Because at some point, that guy wants to play.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm pretty sure his contract is up at the end of this year. So, given his age, he doesn't have much transfer value or trade value, even though there are.
I mean, he does to the president's desk at home. So
I don't think they have the money to pay him.
Probably not.
Or the Sounders, for that matter.
Yeah.
So his season's coming up, or his contract's coming up. I think the Sounders are more likely to just ride it.
I mean, I would. Wouldn't you want that level of depth? And maybe that's where we are. And that's where I expect it to end up. But I was just curious because we did see some interesting buzz last year. And
absolutely.
Again, like Central Southern American soccer rumors are like bants for us on Twitter, basically. But that would never surprise me to see, even like former clubs of his and so on just pop up and be like, oh, we'll take that guy.
Yeah, he can go on a free at the end of the year. So
right.
There's really not any reason.
So Hunch Bunch in the chat mentions Leardom. And by the way, I cannot say Leardom like a certain announcer for the Sounders does. Like I hear it in the bathroom and I'm like, that's probably right, but I mentally cannot get there. But anyway, Leardom's looking like an all-star at right back, and, Smith-Rodriguez connections are continuing to improve. Yeah. Smith-Rodriguez, to me, is scary.
Yeah, thanks.
Rodriguez, in general, pretty scary.
Yeah.
But, like, a big, big observation for me coming out of the other night was Rodriguez takes 2+ players from a mid out of the play.
Yeah,
like he draws 2 all day. Like, he's in a spot where maybe one person should be taking him out, and there's 2+. And it happened 3 or 4 times the other night. And, like,
his skill on the ball is
holy
just incredible.
Shit. Like, amazing. And that's where, like, Smith, just the speed and, like, some of it's just the way he thinks about play. Like, you can watch what he does with the ball. And Rodriguez and he, I think, have some of that same chem. It's like playing FIFA, and you randomly slide a player in, and all of a sudden it's like flashing, blinking. This is the best chemistry of all time. Like, there's a little bit of that, not that we've never seen that, but It's really good, and it's good every single time.
Yeah, they've been fantastic. It's. I'm a little surprised at how good they've looked. Not that either of them are not talented players or showed flashes of it last year, but they were only together for a short amount of time last year because Smith dealt with injuries for most of the second half of the year and didn't even play in the playoffs, and then Rodriguez was injured for the first half of the year. So it's been surprising.
They haven't necessarily gotten to play together, so some of it's just timing. But beyond that, like, it isn't just being on the field at the same time. Like, there's definitely something about the way even they each think about receiving the ball from the other. Like, they've talked a couple times. It's just interesting to see, and that's something where, like, there have always been dynamic players on the field for Sounders. Every year, there's somebody that you're like, and for me, like, Marco Papa is a good bar where he just, like, does crazy shit, takes 2-3 players off the field, but Rodriguez does that and actually scores and actually gets assists. So it's not just you're able to draw defenders and then change the way that Sounders can attack in general. He does that and gets on the board.
Yeah, it's an interesting parallel, obviously 2014, because that was the best regular season the Sounders have ever had, winning the Shield and the Open Cup, and that it'd be interesting to compare those two lineups at full strength,
right?
Because you had the forward power of Dempsey and Martins, who just tried stuff,
and I don't know, you kind of got not even that caliber, but you got a little bit of like Rodriguez, Rui Diaz, Morris are like, we can all score 20 goals.
Yeah,
cool. Like, that's kind of dumb.
Yeah, and remember Nagel that year had I think 9 goals.
Who
and
just
9
chopped
assists.
it up by like taking garbage.
Yeah, 9 goals and 9 assists. I think he had that year. There's like there was nothing serious, but they're like small rumors. Like, is this guy like a national team player?
Yeah,
because he would just take everything that Dempsey and Martins would serve up, and he scored a couple of golazos himself.
Yeah,
and so it's just incredible what you can do when you have that kind of talent taking that pressure. As you said, Rodriguez taking 2 guys on out of the play potentially, and then you're able to
and then you freed up Jordan Morris.
Freed up other players.
Okay,
and so it's
that's
an interesting parallel between those two teams.
It is. It's a good point, and I think to me the difference has been, it's one thing to be a really, really good player. Obafemi Martins is this, where he could just not even get in the stat sheet for weeks, but he is the game changer over and over because he just is able to do stuff that you don't even think about. Aside from the fact that people like look at him and they're like, I could take that guy out, and he's like,
no, you can't.
Great, I just ran under you and your other tall defender. But that's where I think the bar changes. Like, it's one thing to draw players, it's another thing to draw players and come out with the ball and then score.
Yeah,
and that's where they are now. And there are 3 or 4 players that have not Rodriguez's skill for that, but are pretty like nasty in general. Like, Rui Diaz is one of the more unselfish, really good scoring forwards that I've seen in person. Like, that guy passes, and you're like, I don't think I would have passed the ball in that situation. Like, were I him? And he's like, oh no, that's a goal right there, and it is, And it's interesting to see like truly like chemistry, and this was thought through, and like, I don't know, half these parts have been here for a hot minute.
Yeah.
And now they all happen to be healthy at the same time.
Yeah,
so,
which is just not something they've had for the last since 2014, pretty much. And so it'll be interesting to see how they manage them over the next month with the rotation, with the congestion.
Yeah.
So the good news is, in case anybody didn't hear, Rui Diaz was out at practice today, practice in full.
Good. Didn't hear that. That's awesome.
So he is available for Wednesday. I assume they'll have him out there, but at least they have another option now with the congestion coming up. So I think he could have played on Saturday if they really wanted to, but again, it's one of those things. Why are you going to risk that?
Right. At some point, you're like,
season?
Sit him.
Yeah. He was going to need a break anyway. He wasn't going to play all 6 games. Very few of the Sounders will play all 6 games. this month, so that's not really surprising. And they got him a week off. They got a win.
Yep.
And now they can have him, go to Colorado and try to get a win, because that's going to be an interesting game, just because Colorado can be a difficult place to play, especially with the elements. But the Sounders have done pretty well there over the years. I would expect them to win, but again, Colorado, they're going to be desperate for a win. They're winless at the moment.
Yep.
And so it'll be interesting to see what kind of lineup they run out there.
Yeah, I'm. It's interesting because, on one hand, again, the schedule makers expected LAFC to be good. They probably expected Toronto to be good. But when you really look at this, like the test's been going on. The test may start now.
Oh, I think so.
Because I have the Supporter Shield standings up on my screen, and it's like, oh, everyone Sounders have played so far is below this line down here. Like, that's it's not we're 2 games in, like we're 5+ games in,
Yeah, you're starting to see some patterns.
You're like, okay, so now you're going to play 3 games in whatever, 3 weekends, all against teams above the fold.
Yeah, with the exception of Colorado, yeah.
Right, but I'm saying starting Saturday.
Oh, sorry, yeah.
Right, so starting Saturday, you're going to play the 1 team twice and the 5 team once.
Yeah, it's going to be...
all of those teams have 2.5 plus points per game so far.
Well, again, it's early, but I tweeted out just kind of the points per game of the Western Conference, and the worst team is SKC in the top 7. I think the points per game is 1.6, which would get you like 56 points.
That's a lot of points
as a 7th place team. Now, obviously, they're gonna play each other, formal changes, stuff like that. But I think there is a bit of a disparity between the top 7 and the bottom 5.
It is dramatic,
especially in the Western Conference.
And we should get into the Vancouver and Portland thing a bit tonight, and not just to poke fun, but it's actually interesting.
No, absolutely.
And I would say the thing to me, and this is honestly the only reason I brought it up, was Toronto's played 4 games, right? LAFC's played 6. Their points per game is higher. So, more games, typically less points per game. That's not how that's working. And that's not just a function. I mean, it's related to the goal differential. It's not just about scoring more goals. They continue to gain steam. And it's going to be interesting to see if anybody can, put a boot in them. Because, them losing the first time, I mean, it's going to be the same for us. Let's not lose.
Yeah.
But LAFC losing the first time is going to hurt. Because they've just been killing people. Yeah. And I really think it'll be interesting to see how they handle that, how Bradley et al. Handled. It's just going to be interesting because they're being made out to be world beaters, and it's week 6.
Yeah. I still think there's definitely a hierarchy now for this year that will and especially in the Western Conference, will probably continue over the course of the year, just because there is a disparity in spending between some of the higher teams in the West and the teams above the red line in the West and the teams below. And Portland has the road streak that they're on, 12 is, I think, consecutive on the road, which, the Sounders came back from a terrible start last year. And so did DC United, actually. Made the playoffs after spending half the season on the road. But there still are some amount of points that you need to get, even in MLS. And granted, with a new team or a new slot, 7th seed coming in, you don't need to be nearly as good as you had to be in the past.
Yeah, but it's not an excuse. If anything, it's that's right, there's 7 this year.
Yeah.
And I don't know, let's talk about Portland and Vancouver for a hot second. Portland, Saturday at Dallas.
That's not good.
The following Saturday at Columbus.
Yeah.
The following Saturday at Toronto.
Not good.
the following week at RSL,
That's still not good.
at Vancouver, at Houston. Like, that's actually a lot of miles. Like,
It's a lot of good teams.
Dallas, far. Columbus and Toronto, far. And a week apart. So, like, they're going to come home.
Yeah.
RSL, not that
manageable.
far. Vancouver, you're going to get the shit beaten out of you. Not, like, score-wise, just it's Cascadia.
Yeah.
And then the next week in Houston, like,
Which is
that's
a,
you played Dallas
poor
and
bad place to
Houston
play.
in a month and 2 days. That's a lot of travel. Like, Texas is really far.
Yeah.
And
they have to go there twice. That's
as much as we can talk about the whole, like, they got to stack the deck with home matches toward the end of the season, at some point, I know DC did this. At some point, though, like,
you need to rack up some points.
You're demolished.
Well, the year that they missed the playoffs, and I want to say it was 2016.
It was right after they won.
Yeah. 2016. They didn't win a road game that year, and they missed the playoffs by I think 2 or 3 points. So you do need to win some amount of road games. You don't need to win a lot in MLS, but you need to win a few. And if they go, they got 1 point now. If they go, maybe 1 and 10 in this stretch, I mean, that's just absolutely brutal.
But the thing is, it's like you played 5 games, you're 0-4-1, and you're -10.
Yeah, and that's another thing.
Like, you have a decent keeper. They looked really bad this weekend.
Yeah, I haven't watched the game yet. I plan to watch at least the extended highlights.
I had gotten a recap from folks just out and around, and then I watched the, like, sizzle version.
Yeah.
They look really bad. It was almost less, who's it, San Jose? Less San Jose highlights and more like Portland
blunders.
lowlights. Like, it's bad. And I don't think people really expected that. I didn't.
Well,
I thought they'd be okay.
I was, I'm not going to claim that I had any foresight, but, Valeri's getting up there. And so you just, from what I've read, he's been really, off the pace. And, a player like that, at some point, you wonder if it's turning into another Dempsey situation.
Right. Is
where,
he done?
Yeah, he doesn't have the legs to really do what he's accustomed to doing. Char is probably, he's who he's always been, which is good for at least a yellow card.
At least one.
Every other game.
Yeah.
And so, I haven't watched enough to say if he is a problem, except for his tendency to flick people in the ears, apparently. So I would be very concerned if I were them. But that said, they are difficult, obviously, to beat at home.
Right.
So and again, you do not need that many road wins to make the playoffs, especially with a 7 seed. So if they can get, 2 or 3 wins on the road this year and, rack up 37 points at home, that's going to get you to 45 points or so, which with, again, a 7th playoff spot is probably enough to get you into the 7th seed, which isn't all that great, but you're in the playoffs at least, and
so,
anything can happen.
So you're saying, as Carrie wisely points out, that they are scusa.
Yeah, what the hell is that?
It means sorry in Italian, like straight up.
Yeah, I've seen that. I
I'm
honestly
sorry.
haven't paid much attention to that.
How did you not think about that? So they put the letters, again, every club ever in the world has like giant letters on seating. So they put these new 4,000 seats in. By the way, if you're going to build the Bombonera in Portland, add 20,000 seats. If you're going to miss half a season at home, add more seats. Anyway, it says SCUSA.
What is the point of that?
Because they think that they're Soccer City USA.
Oh, okay. Sure.
Or
Fine.
they're sorry in Italian, which, like, did no one look into this? By the way,
no one ever does Google searches.
65-64,
Ooh.
Virginia, Texas Tech, if you're not paying attention to the national championship for men's hoops and you care about those sorts of things. How much time? Minute?
Yeah, minute and a half.
Minute left. So get on that. And I know at least one person who plays the drums in ECS who is super excited right now that they're coming back. But anyway, I don't know. I'm surprised that they're as bad as they are. But again, welcome to MLS.
Yeah.
So
losing to San Jose, that should be an eye opener.
We
for
talked about
anybody.
it we talked about it the other day, but it's not good. I mean, good for us. Like great. Like we can have Schadenfreude about Portland all day. But the thing with that is that's where you start to have that trap game because you don't see them coming, and they don't care about anything except beating you.
Yeah,
you know, because like, heaven forbid they are run down AF by the time Sounders play them. All
when is
they
that game,
care about,
by the way,
it's really late. I'm gonna pull the schedule up just for fun.
But yeah, I mean, again, I don't think they're going to be. It's not like they're going to be out of the playoffs, quote unquote, by the time they open up their new place.
It's July 21st.
It's fairly late, so over half the season before the Sounders see them. So.
And then the away is August 23rd.
Yeah, on a Friday.
Yeah.
So again, they're likely not going to be out of the playoffs. But again,
probably either way. Yeah.
But again, the interesting thing about the Western Conference is you look at the standings of the top 7 right now. Who do you really see falling off the pace? Which is the question. Houston maybe, but they look really good right now. But aside from them, Minnesota maybe. But again, you know, they're 3-2 on the road.
Going to get a new stadium. Spike.
Mm-hmm.
I will say the teams below the fold, bluntly, belong below the fold.
Oh, yes. Either because they don't spend or they...
Who will fail
the
here?
roster
Dallas,
is terrible.
Because Dallas. Houston, I don't know.
They have some they got some studs up front.
Galaxy's playing a different game right now than I expected them to. And it's probably Minnesota, if I had to guess. If somebody flips or dips, it's probably them. Kansas City.
They're too good, and Vermees is too good of a coach.
Yeah, I just think they're going to bring it at some point.
And then LAFC and the Sounders, obviously, and LFC and the Sounders.
And this is
I'm not expected to have a major
This is where
dip.
home and home is hard because it sets the tone. Like, heaven forbid one of the teams wins both. Like, because that's the point where it starts to be, like, devastating to the players, where they're like, oh, my God, we can't beat the other good team.
Yeah.
What do we do? And we don't play them anymore after that. So
you have no chance to get those points back.
Yeah, like that really, really hurts. And on one hand, get it out of the way and just be done. On the other, I'm like, they're rolling. But who's to say they wouldn't be rolling in July? So is it maybe better to just do it now? We're healthy. Sounders feel good.
Yeah. Well, I think this is better. I agree, or I would say getting them out of the way now is a preferable option. I mean, it was fun, obviously, with the Galaxy back in 2014 to have those 2 back-to-backs to finish up the season. But that was obviously extremely stressful. As they were the 2 teams vying for the Shield at that point. So there is something to be said for that emotional impact that you can have, and winning the Shield on your home turf. On last minute goal, although I guess a tie would have done the same thing, but
didn't work.
So this year, it's fine to get it out of the way, and then you can just kind of you'll see where you're at. You'll see this will be a measuring stick, and you'll see where you're at.
Total speculation. Adding another team that wisely was pointed out, if you make that 7th spot, you're not getting a playoff game at home.
Yeah.
So that's fine, and it changes the dynamic of who plays when. But like, we are working on multiple axes this season, so like, the season's shorter. There's a break in the middle of it.
Yeah, a long one.
And the postseason is different.
Compressed. Yeah.
So more teams, more compression. Interesting. Is the Shield more or less valuable right now?
Well, I'd say this year, I would say it's not any less valuable because at least you're playing each of your conference, foes twice, and the other conference once. So at least it's even for everybody. There's no, you played one team 3 times, or what have you. So maybe for this year, I would say the Shield has a little bit more value because you're getting a reasonable representation.
Also, there are more stompable teams in the playoffs.
Yeah.
So, on one hand, adds some random, as MLS is. But on the other hand, I feel like it may set you further ahead. And the sort of one and done thing is not something we're all used to. Texas Tech just took the lead.
35 seconds left to go. And
Wow.
I think it's Virginia's ball, so that's a hell of a way to end a national
All
championship
right.
game.
TV ratings.
Yeah.
Anyway, Shield feels interesting to me right now.
I would say so, and especially if you've got the conference right now, the Western Conference is there's a disparity there, and so you're likely to have maybe 3 or 4 teams.
So you're saying
Which
there's a haves and have-nots?
Yeah, which hasn't happened over the last 4 or 5 years, I'd say.
Easy.
Where there's been more than 2 teams vying for the Shield. I think Dallas and Colorado and maybe Toronto in 2016 was the last time where there were more than 2.
Right.
So
But
that'd be a fun little
look at the 7.
race.
Like I'm looking at it right now. It's almost like they added the 7th because someone who quote deserves to make the playoffs every year wouldn't have made it. Like looking at who's in there right now.
So far, that's
Minnesota's
accurate.
like poke, and RSL's like, but me. And by the way, they are always the team that I think will make
be on
the
the
move.
6th. Yeah.
Yeah, and like bump in at the last minute. I don't think that's Colorado. You would like to think Vancouver and Portland had higher aspirations, but RSL to me is the team that's always like, oh, I'm just going to show up at the last minute and be like, what?
Yeah, I mean, obviously this is way too early to talk about, just
For sure.
generally speaking. So it's difficult to see, come back in June after the Women's World Cup, or July, I should say. Start of July, you'll start to see really who's got a chance and who doesn't at the Shield, not the playoff picture. It's just, it's too early really to say.
Don't die.
Yeah, I know, right? I'm getting over a cold. Sorry.
Anyway, so we speculated about lineups and weather.
Yeah.
We talked a little bit about, call it the next 3 weeks, if you will. Like anything else that we're just like not even thinking about right now for Sounders, because I think we're riding the wave.
Yeah.
Whereas like in previous seasons, even previous seasons of doing this show, we're like granular AF all the time. And now I'm like, meh, Sounders are really good. They're killing people. Don't care.
Yeah, there's not a lot wrong with the team right now,
Right,
which
like,
is great.
What are you seeing? Is there anything you're seeing at practice or just in general that you're like, ooh, that's interesting, and we haven't even thought about that?
Not really, because again, their lineup is set. If everyone's healthy, there are not many position battles that where it's truly something where one guy could start one game and another guy could start another game.
Yeah.
It's all set at this point, and so the question will be this summer when the transfer window opens, what they're going to do. My thought is that they need someone to replace Svensson at some point, because it sounds like everyone thought last year was going to be his last year, but it's hard for me to think that this year is going to be his last year, or it's hard to me to think he'll be back in 2020. So you need someone to pair with Roldan, and so it's going to be on the transfer side of things where things are going to get interesting, because if they, maybe they don't continue to be undefeated, but if they continue their pace where they're, at the top 1 or 2 in the conference, then you kind of got to start thinking about, well, what do we need to do for next year? Because you're not going to need someone this year necessarily to come in and replace anybody, because again, who are you going to replace in the starting lineup? You're just talking about depth at that point, and that doesn't seem like a place where you really want to spend a lot of money.
Do you think something gets poked in the Smith-Nuhu discussion this season? Or do they just do what they're doing?
Yeah, I think they're just going to keep doing what they're doing. Smith has that spot on lock right now, and there's really, Nuhu has done nothing wrong.
Right.
It's just, Smith has a dimension to his game that Nuhu doesn't. And so what you'll probably see is Nuhu, what happened last week, Nuhu coming in, playing left back, and, Smith can move up to the midfield line and provide some pace and some defense But again, that's the only real position battle, really.
And is it even a battle?
No, not at this point. Not at
It's
this point.
There happen to be multiple players, basically. Again, good problem to have, knock on wood.
And it's really the issue is trying to get some of the depth guys and bench guys more time. And fortunately for the Sounders, I guess, silver lining is that's going to happen over the next month. And so if someone like Blana can make a case, maybe he can get some more time. But it's just their starting 11 is just so set at this point. It's just difficult to see anyone else breaking through. But that obviously has its own issues if you're not getting your depth guys enough time.
And that's where, like, the last, 5 seasons, every week is a different lineup. And this year they're like, oh, I guess Will Bruin's going to have to play this week. And we're like, oh, Will Bruin had to start. It's like, oh, I can only have 2 espressos instead of a double espresso. Like, I guess I'm okay with that, ish. There's more glassware to wash, but other than that, like, it doesn't matter. Not to say that Bruin and Rui Diaz are not different, but if you told me a year ago that you'd be like, oh, I guess we'll start Will Bruin up top in this lineup, you'd be like, great. Like, it's a non-issue. So we have a little bit of a riches thing going on right now.
I would say really the only question is if Smith leaves at the midpoint when his loan is finished, and there was some talk about
Bournemouth
Nuhu.
is trash. So
but
why would you want to go back?
They're going to stay up. So,
which would have changed that discussion.
Yeah. And he is an expensive player.
Yeah.
So it's not anybody. The Sounders aren't going to buy him,
right?
Because that would make him a DP, and they're not going to spend their remaining DP slot on a left back. So, and there was some talk about Nuhu maybe attracting offers. That was mostly, I think, just kind of
Nuhu's agent.
Puffery. Yes, that is the that's the other way to put it.
Does Nuhu share an agent with Obafemi Martins?
That is a good question. I do not know that. Either way, it was less. There was less there than meets the eye.
So you brought up, we've got some time, and it's nice out, so we should hang out and shoot the shit at the bar. But you brought up DPs and so on, and there was a tweet the other day, and I have not researched this, so it could be wildly off. I don't think it is. But it was this MLS Buzz account, and they were like, if Monterrey joined MLS, they'd have 12 DPs and 5 TAM players. And I'm like, that's actually probably accurate.
Yeah. Oh,
and that's where you go, holy shit.
That is, that's still a huge, and this is kind of on the heels of obviously Sporting Kansas City laying an egg in Champions League against Monterrey last week, losing 5-0, and that's just kind of the way of the world right now for MLS in those international competitions.
But that's where, like, we all take it not that we take it too seriously. We need to be realistic.
Yeah.
At times, there are like home matches where we stomp or play real well against the CCL squad, and then you go to their stadium and you're like, like they broke out the big guns. And it's completely different.
Yeah, the Sounders have been victims of that on more
Monterrey
than one occasion.
Is not the best team in Mexico.
Yeah, they're still top 5, I think.
But, like,
they spend the most.
They have 4 teams worth of designated players. Like, that's stupid.
Yeah. Again, that's just where MLS is, and there's a lot of people complaining that MLS needs to open the purse strings if they want to compete with with Mexican teams on a consistent basis and not just have, one-offs where they make the finals and lose. But I don't think MLS is going to do that. They're not, their whole premise is based on, wage suppression and control of players. And so, there was talk that they were going to drop a DP, not expand the DP program.
That's very much not happening.
And so what are you going to see in 2020 especially with the collective bargaining agreement coming up for renewal? They're negotiating that right now. And so MLS will do their standard thing where they say the league is not profitable.
Right.
We can't afford to, raise the salary cap too much. And if they're not going to raise the salary cap or expand the DP program, then you're going to be at the same place you are now, which is you have a bunch of really good top 3 or 5 players in MLS. But when you get down to, players 6 through, 14, as you talk about, Monterrey has 17 DPs. MLS does not have that.
Like, that's like the entire Western Conference has 17 DPs.
Yes,
Or
yeah.
TAM level players and above. And that's like staggering.
There's one take, and I can't remember who said it. It was a guy who writes for Yahoo Sports. He basically said, at this point, MLS should stop touting that they want to win Champions League if they're not going to back it up by expanding, the salary cap and increasing the DPs, because otherwise it's just lip service. And then what's going to happen is what happened this year when Kansas City loses the first game 5-0. Everyone comes out and trashes MLS as a terrible league and not being able to back up what they're talking about.
Right.
And so at this point, you should just be like, if we're not de-emphasize the competition and just basically say we're just going to kind of grow organically, and maybe in the next 10 years we'll be able to compete consistently. But
Yeah.
until that point, don't mention it really.
So, a couple other things this weekend. We could talk about Wayne Rooney red cards all day, but Fox Sports having the pre-halftime and post-game show in the Screaming Eagles section.
I missed that, so you'll have to give
Yeah,
me the,
so
quick and dirty.
heard it was coming. Yeah, I'll say that. It was 1,000,000,000% what I would have expected it to be. And
Drunk idiots being obnoxious.
it's not even that. It was like awkwardly staged and weird. And there was a point, I don't think it was it might have been post game, where there's a guy like, I don't know, 2 rows in front of the crew, and he's literally arguing with them about how it's football and not soccer.
I heard about this.
And they're like, no, it's soccer. And I was like, at the basic level, you failed at this, Fox. Like, why would you even get in that argument?
Yeah.
Like, not worth it. And my struggle on this is, on one hand, as a marketing person, I'm like, I understand why they asked to do this. As a
Gimmick.
supporters group person, I'm like, are you fucking kidding me? It's like they didn't think through any downside, or they inoculated it so much that you weren't in the supporter section. You happened to be in section X, which happened to have supporters in it. That's not the same thing. So it was like hyped. And this is where MLS is bullshit in a lot of ways, where like they can talk about it and what they said it was. If you know anything about the supporter section anywhere and what happened are not the same thing.
Yeah.
So it was like hype, puffery, whatever word you want to use against it.
Gimmickry.
Like, why would you allow that? And again, I get the point from a marketing perspective. And on a game day perspective, you're a media person. I'm very much not a media person, though I know how to work with media.
Yes.
And I'm like, why would you ever do this? And like, I saw Dave Clark. And by the way, congrats, Dave Clark.
Yes, absolutely.
Dave Clark will next be on SonarFeed as a guest. Because I think legally that's probably the only way he's allowed to do it. But Dave came over to me afterwards and laughed, and he's like, are we enemies now? And it was funny, and like, whatever. This wasn't that. This was like clunky. It was like I'm gonna make a short film about taking my dad to prom. It was that. But for Fox Sports with Alexi Lawless at DCU, it was super awkward.
I mean, I understand. Again, like you, I understand why they did it. It's there's a amount of gimmick to it. It's a new thing that they can kind of publicize.
New stadium.
Yeah.
Audi sponsored it.
Yeah,
And.
That doesn't make it a good idea.
Right. I get it. Really? And the thing is, I feel like we all watched it from home, and it was actually cringy. And that there's a producer somewhere going, we should do that with all the games.
Yeah, let's
in
not do
real
that.
life. And
Let
I'm
us
like,
not do that.
ixnay.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. It was bad.
Yeah, I mean they do that. They've done that kind of stuff on a smaller scale. They'll put one, the sideline reporter with the supporter section, but it's usually just for a 30 second
Again,
hit.
ECS was asked to send someone on our bus to Vancouver, and we were like,
recall that. I think it was what's her name? Katie
that's a
something or
no.
other.
And it's not that you don't like people. It's like, A, this is actually a bad idea.
Yes.
B, no. C, why did you even ask that? And the thing is, this is why people ask. Like, someone thinks that was successful. And it felt like when people who wanted to tolerate each other it was like divorced parents pretending to get along on national television
while they're watching their kid play or something. Yeah.
It was just weird.
Yeah. Hopefully they won't do that again, but they'll come up with some other
something. It'll be something
else.
worse.
Yeah. And, the history in sports is littered with these types of things. You got goalpost cams,
littered,
and
by the way,
ref cams
is the right word.
Yes.
So let's get back to basically the only reason to have a show tonight, and that's that Sammy the Sounder is back.
Congratulations.
And, Sounders had tweeted introducing Sammy the Sounder, whale emoji. Is that what we're going with?
Yeah, I think that's right.
After years away exploring the Pacific Ocean, our favorite orca is back in the Puget Sound.
Didn't they say that he's a descendant?
It is and they used that word, and I was like, okay.
Yes.
So,
well, okay. So this was obviously something that they cooked up at the middle of last week with the whole radar sonar thing coming into play.
I actually think it was cooked up quite some time ago.
That is true.
You mean the overall?
Yeah.
Oh, this.
Yeah.
Yes.
This announcement was cooked
This
up.
is very on brand for SonarFeed.
Yeah. Yes, it was. I appreciated that. But so
is it Brad Evans? Like, is Brad Evans wearing the costume? Because Brad did tweet today at 3:58 that he got a job.
That would be pretty fantastic.
After someone had said,
reveal.
Sammy appears just after Brad Evans retires from the league. I bet that whale is 6'1".
That would definitely raise the
I have
level
to tell
of
you,
epicness of
if
this.
Sammy the
announcement.
Sounder is Brad Evans, I don't even know what I would do.
It would be pretty amazing. But obviously, everyone was initially excited because they thought this was going to be a new player announcement, which that was obviously never going to be the case. And people complaining on Twitter and being mad online. Oh,
wait. People are mad on the internet?
Yeah, it's shocking.
In
shocking.
real life?
It apparently happens. So people were like, "Yeah, we must have a new DP coming in," even though that's never how they've ever announced any player acquisition.
I mean, what was important
a week ahead of time.
was
Come on now.
Andrew Farley in our ECS Slack kind of, let's call it the general channel, said, at least orcas have flippers, while snakes still have no arms. And that's amazing, because if you were the Philadelphia Union, you'd have a snake with arms.
Oh, yes.
In real life, they did that, and it's super uncomfortable. Meanwhile, we're discussing,
And so
is the dorsal fin okay? We're like real granular right now.
It was, I talked to someone with the Sounders, and they were like, because I was, people were like, well, is this a new player signing? And, I asked just to, dispel that. They're like, it's obviously not a player signing. You'll probably be underwhelmed. I am underwhelmed, but again, that's not really I'm not the target demographic for that, so I don't really.
Wait, are you underwhelmed because Sammy isn't larger?
I'm not sure.
And
I'm
doesn't
a fan
actually
of mascots,
eat-
generally speaking.
Eat things
Yeah.
like seals?
Kids, yes, exactly. So
No. Wait, so
am I
off
going to
camera, it
complain
was
about
pointed
it
out
on,
by
on
Kristen
Twitter? No.
that they released a mascot before the kids' game.
Yes,
So what
it
you're
is a
saying
mystery.
is marketing
Yes.
and game day talked because they work for the same company?
Yes, it
I
is.
am in.
So
Carrie points out that Sammy's bio says he is 6 feet tall.
that is within range.
That's less than a standard deviation from Brad Evans.
Brad Evans' height.
Wow, Virginia is up by 4 with 31 seconds left.
Yeah.
No one knows.
Yeah. It's
Up by 5.
Yeah. So I mean, just it's fine. I don't really have any. I'll take one more. I don't have any particular.
Are you having Chardonnay or Sauv Blanc?
Chardonnay?
Oh, cool.
Yes, I'm a 53-year-old mother.
Wow. Thanks, Steve. Mickey on that wine. Ish.
So
Anyway,
it'll be fine. I'm sure the kids will enjoy it. It's a marketing thing. I'm not offended as some people are.
Now that we covered the important parts
Yes.
of today, we could make predictions.
Yeah, let's do that.
So Sounders play. We have 2 games this week. We will not have a show next week. We would have normally had a show next week, but I'm going to be in London.
Yeah.
It does, and I'm trying to go to the Arsenal-Watford game, but I quickly learned that a game at Watford is not convenient at all.
That's in the London area, isn't
It's northwest-ish.
it? Yeah.
But if I took transit, it's like an hour and 40 minutes each way. And on
Yeah.
a Monday, that's not on the list of things that I want to do.
Yeah.
So what I might do is go to a pub, which I heard they have some of in London. Yeah, weird.
Yeah.
Weird.
Shocking.
So we won't be here next week. So let's make a couple of predictions here. So we've got Sounders Wednesday,
Colorado.
6 p.m. Pacific in the snow at Colorado.
Orange ball.
Who's bad? What do you got?
So we're going to see a rotated lineup for sure. The question is obviously how much of a rotated lineup. I think Ruiz plays, which will be very good. My suspicion is that they'll rest Svensson probably and bring Dellum in to play along with Roldan. And then
That's JJ's favorite player, by the way. I think he commented that he was team anyone but Dellum.
I find him to be a decent, serviceable
he's fine.
backup.
That's a good word usage.
Serviceable.
Okay.
He used to be. I used to worry that he was just kind of a red card waiting to happen because some of his challenges were a little too robust.
So Nuhu.
Yeah, Nuhu, like when he first came in the league, but he seems to have calmed that down. So, so I think we'll see Dellum. I think we'll see Rui Diaz. We'll see Torres. I think, and then maybe Buana or Ship comes in for Rodriguez.
Okay.
And then I
Like
think,
starts for Rodriguez?
yeah.
Okay.
And then they have Rodriguez and maybe Morris on the bench to try to if the game's not going well.
So
bring 'em
62-0.
in. Yeah. No. I'm gonna say a 1-1 draw if that lineup is an approximation.
Okay.
Of what we
1-1
see.
Wednesday
Yeah.
at Colorado.
And then on Saturday, full lineup will mostly be back. I think, like I said, Torres will get a start for Kim Ki-hee, but otherwise, most the starters will be in. And for that one, I'm going to say we're going to get a shootout. So I'm going to say 3-2 to the Sounders.
That sounds exhausting.
It definitely would be.
So I like your lineup call on Wednesday. I do think the weather will play a factor.
Yeah.
I'm still going to say 2-0 at Colorado. And then I would say Saturday, a 3-2 seems harsh. I'm going to say 2-1.
It's interesting because you don't. If assuming Toronto's got all their pieces, they are pretty potent on offense. Their defense has not been as good, which is why I think the Sounders will be able to have some joy with them. But it's one of those things I think we'll see some dangerous play from Toronto on offense.
Don't die.
Excuse me again. Yeah, jeez.
Mickey down. I think since we last had a show, some things in the world in the Seattle soccer scene have evolved slightly. David Clark is doing his South Sound full-time job soccer.
That's right. Working for the Defiance and Reign.
What are you doing?
So I basically joined. Well, I did join Sounder at Heart.
Basically,
just doing kind of Sounders-related news since I was going to practice anyway. They were like, "Well, we'll pay you to do that," and I was like, "Okay, that sounds
what
like
is
a good
payment?
idea." Yes.
Money?
Yeah.
Cool.
So it's not a full-time job. Obviously, I still have my lawyerly duties, but since I work for myself and have a flexible schedule, I am able to go down to practice. So I figured it'd be a good job to take, and I've enjoyed it so far. It's cool to work with those guys on a more consistent basis. I did a few articles for them. They were more like legalistic stuff.
Yeah.
So it's cool. I enjoy it. So I'm happy to be part of the Sounder at Heart team.
So is that augmenting any of your other stuff?
Well, so I still am doing. I am still contributing to the Athletic.
Okay.
And I will continue to do that. And then I obviously still write for my site, Soccer ESQ, and so I'll have some articles coming out this week. So there was kind of a lull in the legal world over the last couple of weeks. But
I mean, Columbus is boring.
yeah, and they got their stuff together, unlike Miami. But hopefully we'll see some good stuff.
So 2 seconds on
Interesting
that.
stuff.
Do you think they changed the name?
Which one?
Inter.
No, that lawsuit isn't going.
Again, as somebody who
it's not
likes-
even a lawsuit.
Inter.
Yeah,
I think it's super dumb.
I agree.
Welcome to soccer.
Yeah.
And
they have a great logo. I mean, their logo is cool, but it just Inter Miami. Come on, But it's a trademark issue. But you're not going to be able to trademark Inter. There's like 37 Inters around the world.
Right.
No one's going to confuse Inter Miami for Inter Milan, and so it's.
But there are straight rips of team names and crests. Like when I was in Chile, there's Everton de Viña, and it's literally the Everton crest. And I think they might have changed the color. And then I started talking to people, and they were like, "Oh, all these English teams came and did a tour and played friendlies in 1924."
Sounds
And then
about right.
all the local people stole all of the team names. And it's fine. And no one cares.
It's like the
Now-
knockoff you get on the.
But
on the
think about the
streets in New
difference
York
of
City.
it's like the difference of 100 years ago and today.
Yeah.
And they're like, our crest is completely different. If it was blue and white,
Yeah.
I would get it. Black, blue, white, I get it. It is not any of those things. It's as far from Inter Milan as you could probably go.
It's not going anywhere. But it'll be interesting to follow. But it's very silly. I'm more interested in the Chicago Fire stuff immediately anyway. So
You mean the Chicago team that will actually play in Chicago Fire?
The Chicago City SC. That's that's more interesting, at least immediately, because we all watched the game against the Sounders, and there were more Sounders fans there nearly than Fire fans, and that it's you just can't have your third biggest city with that little relevance in the market, and so it makes a lot of sense why they're trying to move them back to the city. And so I think I would bet a sizable amount of money that's going to happen for next year.
I mean, Soldier Field's like, okay,
Yeah.
we will accept these events. So, total awkward bridge, but I'm going to do it anyway. Wow, is it really already been a day? So last night, I
yes.
had seen this on the Golwa Seattle Soccer Twitter account, but Schmetz's dad has terminal cancer, and there's a Facebook page for like thoughts and other things that has been created. We'll retweet this on the SonarFeed account, but that came through last night, and it sounds like it's progressing really, really aggressively.
Yeah.
And that's the wrong choice of words, but that's what I got. It sounds like they have brought him home from wherever he was in care to spend time with the family earlier today. Really, really sad in the Seattle soccer family.
Yeah. Obviously, the Smetzers are
Doing
iconic
what they do. Yeah.
Iconic in the Seattle soccer scene.
Like, or just in Seattle,
Yeah.
if you're paying attention, honestly. But, like, yeah, that kind of came out of nowhere last night. And Schmetz is pretty good with close to the vest in life.
Yeah, yeah.
So, to me, this struck me as something where it just had to be said, and people were like, he deserves this. Like, this being out there. Because I could see something like this not even being public.
Yeah.
Until a week from now.
Well,
and like really kind of a tough thing. So if you are interested in this or sharing some, words of love or anything like that, there's a Facebook page called Loving Life with Walter Schmetzer Sr., spelled as you would expect. It'll come up if you search. We'll tweet some things a little bit later, but they are sharing kind of words and messages and things with the family. So
yeah, hopefully they get to spend some
Time.
significant time together before anything, as you said, progresses any further. So.
And this is one of those, like, it's fun to talk about random, silly things all the time. At the same time, there's things like this where I go, wow, they've taken social media and are using it in a really specific way. And the neat thing is it's not just like throw stuff in a hole. He's apparently paying attention to this. So that's pretty cool. And this, again, speaks to community, as a whole. This is important to people, and they like to give back. And this is a way that, right now we're seeing that's, I think, really, really close to all of us.
Yeah. And I'm sure they appreciate it. So
Yeah.
Certainly send a message if you are so inclined.
It's one where when I opened it last night, I was like, hitting like on this feels really
yeah.
weird, but I want to see it, like, what do you do? But anyway, so thoughts and whatnot out to, Schmetzer and the family and extended
Sounders,
family and Sounders and beyond. And unfortunately, like, not a thing that any of us would want to talk about, but it felt important to bring up.
Sure, absolutely.
I don't even know where to go from that. So, really? That's a tough bridge, but that's a good one.
Ladero is up for goal of the week, so go vote for that if you'd like to see that goal.
That means I'd have to look at my phone. It's on the internet. Anyway,
so that's.
I'm going to give you this for the moment.
Oh.
Look this up.
Again, a terrible segue, but since Hunch Punch asked in the chat what's going on with the Chicago ownership, Sale Stadium, so Andrew Hauptman is he owns like 49% of the team. They brought in somebody else who took over majority ownership, but they want to. I think if the Fire moved back to Soldier Field, and they have to buy out the lease in Bridgeview, which is the major problem, because they owe the city of Bridgeview or village of Bridgeview owes like almost $200 million on a stadium that they constructed for about $96 million. That's obviously, if you can do math, that's a terrible way to manage your facility.
I understand basic math concepts, and I don't understand how that happened.
You borrow a bunch of money against the value of the stadium, and then the stadium depreciates, and then you don't have enough events to pay for the payments.
Because you're in
Bridgeview, where the most not famous thing, but the most attractive thing near the stadium is the Circle K. That's literally the Wikipedia
cool
entry for nightlife and entertainment in the area. So they'll buy out their Houtman, who wasn't spending any money anyway. They're going to have to spend between $75 and $100 million to buy out the lease because it lasts until 2036. And there's no way they can move without it. This isn't a crew thing where they can try to sneak out without,
I mean,
you
could do that.
You could do that, but then you get sued and
just change their name to the Fuego.
Yeah. Well, I don't think they could do that either. But aside from that, that's what's going on with the Fire. I bet we'll see some news here in the next month and a half.
So, confidence level, 80, 90%, that's happening? Like, that's happening,
95%.
Right? But, like, real soon.
Yeah. The only it's when, not if.
Do you think that Bridgeview will put in for an expansion team?
No,
that's not going to happen.
We'll see what they do with the stadium. They, I think the NWSL team plays there. I think I could be off on that, but basically they probably just rent it out to various other concerts.
It's
and
interesting because
stuff like that.
Like you rip half the decks out and like change the structure because
I mean that's
it's in like a neighborhood. It'd be like, oh, we put a stadium in Ballard.
That is basically what happened there. It was a terrible idea from the start, and now they're paying for it. Yeah, it may be a little bigger than Ballard. It'd be like putting a stadium in Federal Way.
And you're like, oh, that's super convenient.
For that, yeah, no.
All right,
I can say that I live in Federal Way.
So that's happening.
Yeah.
Any?
Speaking of stadiums, I am working on a story on finding out what's going on with the Defiant Stadium. Hoping to have some information on
the
that.
New stadium.
The new stadium.
Proposed stadium.
The proposed stadium. Hoping to have some information on. I do not know what's going on inside, but
I don't know what just
hoping
happened.
To have some new information here in the next couple of weeks on where that's going.
It ended like 5 minutes ago. So
we'll end on some Sounders related news. There are some things moving along, progressing.
Chicago is definitely not going to win the World Cup.
You never know.
Anyway,
they completely changed their structure, and that's
So all right, so got a couple Sounders games this week. Another big week that we will not be here to preview, but we'll be here to recap the first leg of a couple weeks out.
Yeah,
and then preview the next. Interesting times in Sounders land.
Yeah,
the West is fascinating.
Yeah, it's the next 3 games. By the time we get back, so we'll have played Colorado, Toronto, and LAFC away.
The first one, yeah,
and then so we'll be here to recap that 3 games. So, going down to LAFC is going to be pretty tough to get a result, obviously, but they're going to want some revenge because they lost both games last year on some fluky circumstances. The first game they were not at full strength at all, and then Fry had that unfortunate gaffe in the second game.
They're going to put up like a 6 spot on Tyler Miller, basically.
Yeah. Miller's gotten the upper hand on him for the last year. So
all right. So JJ, how many points by next show? So you've got 3 matches.
So they got 13 now. They've got 3 games.
You could just say how many more points.
Yeah, that's probably
9
better.
Possible.
Yes, 9 possible. I'd say 5 sounds like it would be pretty good. 5 would be the minimum because that's 2 ties and 2 draws and a win. I'd say best case is probably 6, which is a win Colorado, win
I'm gonna
Toronto,
say 7.
loss LAFC.
I want 7 points.
7 would be fantastic. 7 would be fantastic. I'm going to say
The draw will be Colorado.
Yeah, right. I'm going to say 6. I'm going to say 6.
6 points.
Yeah,
Okay.
2 wins and a loss.
Good prediction. All right. Well, thank you, Mickey. Good show. Good
Thank you, Tom.
time here tonight at the Berliner Pub. Thanks, y'all, for joining us here in person and on the internet. I'm going to figure out how to end the show. I think there's a button here somewhere. It's very John Oliver of me. I'm like, MASH. Anyway, so thanks to everybody for joining us tonight. Have a good 2 weeks.
See everyone on Saturday for the Toronto game.
Wednesday night, Fuel,
Fuel is the
6 p.m.
all right.
Be there. Later.